Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar on human-based leaders, on the human-based leader. It's a discussion between leaders on the leadership strategies required for thriving during COVID-19. So we welcome you all for being here. And right now we're going to introduce Colleen Davis as well as Dr. Kim Hires. We ask that before we get started that everyone please keep their video off to conserve bandwidth. You can have your audio on, but please keep your video off. We also ask that we will have a Q&A session. So you don't have to put questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A session at the end. And we will also be recording this webinar so that we can get it out to you guys at a later date and time. So without further ado, Dr. Kim.
Well, thank you. I'll let Colleen go first if she would like to introduce herself and talk about how she got into the leadership development space. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Kim. In my career, I have worked with toxic, abusive leaders as well as innovative leaders, and I saw how it shifted and changed both the productivity, the engagement of the staff, and the way that everyone just felt, the energy around everyone. And as a nurse, I have a nursing background, I saw the potential of human beings, of people. And I got curious as to what makes good leaders and why do people not reach their potential? And so that got me on a journey of discovering more, finding out what is good leadership, and especially going into neuroscience. And then I found executive coaching, which allowed me to really go deeper and enable people, especially women, to reach their potential. Because so many people, when they don't know that they can be good leaders, become defensive, deflective, and aggressive. And because of that, I just became passionate about trying to find the best way of natural way that people can just flow into their leadership identities. And when you and I connected, Kim, we realized that we shared a common goal, and we came up with the human-based leadership, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
So back to you.
I know. So how I came into the leadership development space, much of my career has sort of been accidental leadership. It's been, I've been fortunate to be given opportunities where people saw something in me and encouraged me to step into leadership. And I was very ambitious, but didn't necessarily seek out an administrative position. And at the height of my career, when I was in a leadership position, I experienced leadership burnout. And I hit an absolute wall that affected everything. It affected my career, it affected my personal life, it affected my health. And the more I learned about this, the more I realized that my experience wasn't that uncommon. And more leaders actually experience burnout. The problem is no one teaches us what to look for. And so for me, I got into coaching to help leaders do that. I'm an international speaker. I am a certified coach. I have 2 books out. I am an author. And I'm all about developing the leader, not just their performance, but developing that person behind the role so that they can handle the challenges of leadership. And so when you and I connected, and like you said, we talked about the different challenges that leaders have, and we realized that no one was really addressing how hard it is to lead. Right? The hard skills you can do. You can balance a budget sheet. You can figure out how to make money and generate revenue. But the hardest part of leadership is the human aspect, leading yourself effectively and then turning around and leading others effectively. That was the hardest part of the job for me when I was in a leadership position. It was the people It was hard, but it was also the most beautiful part of the job. And so that's why I got into this space, and I work with leaders individually and with organizations to help them develop that ability, to help them make sure that they're leading from a healthy place so that they don't experience burnout like I did.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So Dr.
Oops, Kyle, we lost you. We can't hear you.
Well, while we're finding Kyle, Kim, tell me more about your viewpoint, the scientific depth of your coaching. Like, where does it come from? What is the background of it? I know for myself, I use a lot of Gestalt, which is about awareness of self and movement, and change comes from there. Mm-hmm. You use John Maxwell, but you've also developed another way. Tell me more about your philosophy.
For me, so we sort of captured that very much in the human-based leader model in what we developed, but my style was unique because of my nursing background, right? We know in nursing and in healthcare, you cannot change behavior by just focusing on one aspect of a person. And so when I would coach leaders, they would seem shocked that I would ask them questions about, their support system and their personal lives, because they were so used to traditional coaching models that focused on performance. And what I found, particularly when you look at the research, most individuals in leadership positions are naturally high achievers. It is not a matter of they can't perform. As a coach, my role is to understand why they are not performing to their fullest potential. And so just looking at different models, it's highly customized. Gestalt might work for one client, but it may not work for another. And I'll have to dig and find research that works for individual clients. And I also use assessments in my coaching. So I pull that piece in as well, because it helps, particularly when I'm dealing with a really analytical leader, it helps them to be able to quantify what's going on. And you have to understand, especially in healthcare, the higher up you go in healthcare leadership, the more they're used to dealing with numbers. And so when I can put an assessment report in front of them and say, this is where you fall on this spectrum, they respond to that a lot better. So I think that's one of the things that makes my style a little unique in my approach with clients.
Yeah, and I think that is absolutely right, especially when you think of the uniqueness of the human being, and as a coach, being able to really look at the full person and meet them where they're at and be able to adapt things. I think that is our strength, and human-based leadership in that, because it recognizes everyone's uniqueness and the gifts that they have, and the full biological, psychological, neurological, chemical, spiritual makeup of a person just shifts everything.
Yes. Kyle, are you back?
Yes, I'm here. I am clearly, thank you, ladies. I got all that. Clearly, the COVID-19 crisis has affected all life, businesses, and organizations and daily operations. What are some of the impacts that you have personally witnessed so far?
Colleen, I'll let you start with that one.
Thank you. I think we in South Africa have a delayed response, and we have had a very strong governmental move to lock things down. We are in, I think it's day 53 or 54 of lockdown, and we're only opening up in different phases. But in this time, what I've seen is people have lost jobs and livelihoods and security and certainty and status. Everything has been thrown into the air. And it's as if a sandstorm has come and just covered everything. But what it has also done is it's highlighted if there's any ineffective leadership or processes, it has really magnified that. It has also allowed opportunity. It's almost created a leveling of the playing fields. And if if people are able to get beyond their mourning, then there is a lot of opportunity. But first, I just want to say to people who are watching, who are here, we see you. And there is a lot of mourning. A lot of people are hurting right now. And there are different levels of stress. And for some people, especially on front line, they're on level 2 stress and they can't think at that point. And so it doesn't help when people come and say, you have to produce brilliant work. When you are still battling, you're not sure where your next paycheck is coming, or your family, someone has died. Or, for example, people who are at school or at university who have not had their graduation or their year is under threat. And I think it is really important for us to be gentle with ourselves and with our teams. And that is why human-based leadership is so important right now, because you first have to deal with yourself as a human being, as a person, and be able to really understand where you are before you can actually lead others with hope, because we need hope right now. Our brains are neurologically, we prefer negativity, and that is where we go. Also, when we're under threat, we go back to the collective, building relationships, bonding. But we've got to choose who we are bonding with and what is our outlook and how we got to create the community. So what I am seeing is a lot of pain, but also a lot of opening of what was hidden and what was not good in our society, and the potential of shifting and changing things. Already, most people are already working from home. So we are moving into 21st century ways of doing work and leadership very quickly. And unless we get support to help us through this, it is a very difficult space to be. So I'm sure, Kim, you can add to that as well.
No, I mean, I'm here, I'm in the United States, and I mean, the whole world knows how it's going for us.
Yeah.
And we have attendees from not only South Africa, but Morocco and the States. So it's a hard time for everyone. First and foremost, I think people are grappling with the concept of safety in every sense of the word. So financial safety, physical safety, things such as just shelter, right? We've had to adapt and change very quickly. Let me say change, because everyone isn't fully adapting, right?
Yeah.
For us, I know particularly in the state that I live in, we went under shelter in place or lockdown measures starting March 16th. We had shelter in place for about 45 days, and now we're reopening. So it's very interesting to see, you know, literally we're split down the middle with, yes, we need to reopen, or no, we need to continue to lock in place. And what I'm seeing is a level of stress among leaders that I don't think we've ever seen before. When we've had other global pandemics in the past, it was treated as, oh, that's happening way over there, or that's not happening here, that's not our problem. Now, there isn't, probably 1 in every 5 people have been affected by this in the United States. As of this morning, we're at 1.5 million cases. And that's just what's been tested. We're sure that there's more. It's creating such a change in the nature of work and the future of work that the conversation I've been having with leaders is the employees or the team members that left before we all had to go into lockdown will not be the same people that return when we come out of lockdown. And if you attempt to utilize the same leadership paradigm and the same leadership measures that you used before, or strategies that you used before, you're going to encounter resistance, rebellion, or mass exodus. One of the three, because something happens. This, for a lot of people, this is their worst fear. I mean, unemployment is at a record high here. We're higher than we were during the Great Depression of 1929, and it's only expected to get worse. That's our reality. That does something to people, right? The human brain identifies a threat within a fifth of a second, identifies a threat. Change is perceived as a threat. So you have people coming back into the workforce with a heightened sense of fear. They feel threatened. They are concerned. They're not only concerned about losing their jobs, but they're concerned about being sick. So it's a very different workforce that we're returning to. I think the future of work is completely changed after this. Completely.
Yeah, true. Well, thank you, ladies, both for that. Based on those answers, how do you feel your human-based leader model creates a change or a shift in leadership paradigms going forward? I think you guys touched on it a little bit, but if you can just dive a little bit more into that, that'd be great.
Can I touch on that? I'll start.
Go ahead.
I think, Kim, you go
Dr.
first.
Kim, Dr. Kim, go ahead and start us off.
So in the midst of all of the negativity, there are also some positive things that are coming out of this. We're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation. As someone who has tried to push change in the workplace before and who has been met with resistance of, no, we can't do that. No, we have to go through this approval process. No, all of a sudden in 2 weeks, things are magically okay, right? So now you have 80% of a workforce engaging in remote work. Or all of a sudden we can do staggered shifts. So the innovation has been a positive thing that has come out of this. Another positive that has come out of this is the growth. We have been using 50-year-old leadership principles and models. They're not working. And especially as the workforce changes and becomes younger, they are not responsive to older leadership models or leadership approaches. The other good thing that I've seen come out of this is community, a shift where people genuinely care about each other. Thanks to Colleen, I've had the pleasure of watching the #I'mStaying movement. And it has just been so touching for me to watch. And in America, we have the American movement, which is led by Chris Cuomo, he's a well-known reporter here in the States, where he highlights things that are happening, good things that people are doing to help in this crisis. And so when we came up with the model, it's 3 phases. The first phase is always in self-awareness. A leader that is aware of themselves, that understands how to tap in and say, why am I responding this way? What is it that I feel? How does my history play a part into how I'm interpreting the events in front of me? That's a powerful tool. And usually with clients, that's the first step. You have to get them to learn how to tap into themselves. So as coaches, we don't advise, we don't recommend, we ask questions. Because inherently we believe that the answer is within. So we ask questions to get them to shift their perspective from looking at situations from a very negative or harmful lens to a more positive or opportunistic lens. When you get through the self-awareness phase, then the next phase is developing an awareness of others. A hallmark of this is empathetic leadership. So being able to see the humanness in someone else and understand that, like you, they are human, and so they may be reacting to things simply out of their humanness. And then the final stage of this model is building a global community. I think this crisis has shown us none of us exist in a vacuum, and borders are concepts. They're not real. Once globalization hit and you had airline travel as easy as clicking a button, We no longer exist in isolation anywhere. And so it's important for leaders to have a mindset in which they may act globally, but they may act locally, excuse me, but they're constantly thinking globally. And so learning how to develop a global paradigm as a leader. So what is your global identity? Even if you have a small business, you can still have a global footprint. What is your organization's legacy? Does it reflect your values? What do you receive? What do you give? Asking questions like that. And what we do with our clients is we sort of train them to think through this process with every challenge. And so it affects their behavior and promotes behavior change because they're starting from, where do I have control? How can I help others? And then how can I help the larger community or the global community? Colleen, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to apologize. I have a noise I have no control over, and I think it's going to come across, but I'm not in a vacuum and I'm not in a strange space. It just is an outside noise I have no control over.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. I think it's really important that we acknowledge that if you look at the model, we are based in community. Human beings have not changed that much since cavemen times. We respond to threats in a very similar way. But where we are now and our leadership models have been influenced by our global history, our world history, and it has been very militaristic, colonial, and all of that has brought about an expectation of hierarchy, command and control. But the world has shifted, and right now, as you said, Kim, it's shifted just like that. And suddenly, before we ignored the most vulnerable. Now we're saying the most vulnerable are our yardstick to see how we are doing as a society. If we don't do it together, we're not going to get through this. And we've had to shift and change the way that we see each other and ourselves. I think it's really important that we look at why, with the technology that has rapidly shifted and changed in the world, human beings have confused artificial intelligence in a way with human beings. We've almost tried to put humans in boxes because we've been influenced by artificial intelligence. And yet the potential, now there's more and more research into our neuroplasticity of how our brains haven't even harnessed enough of what is still coming when we are allowed to be creative and we're allowed to be human, which means we are attached to a family and we're attached to a community. And in the past, what happened is your manager, line manager, the leaders did not want to know really more about you. And what happened is you were almost having to wear a mask at work. And we created workers instead of amazing, creative, innovative, agile human beings who have the ability to dream and create something out of that dream. And that is what this pandemic has actually shown. And the human-based leadership is perfectly poised right now to be able to enhance that and support leaders right now in that space. Because it's about who am I as a leader? And many other leadership models have that. But it's really about, and we're just adding to that. I said right in the beginning that many models look at certain things. They look at language, they look at conversation, they look at emotional intelligence, how do you present yourself? But what we are saying is that you can't just look at one element. You can't just look at one part of a person. You've got to look at the whole person, knowing that there are many different personalities. And filters that people are looking at the world and the way that we respond to the world. And we have to acknowledge that within ourselves and learn who we are, what our nature is. Then to be able to learn about our team so that we can embrace the diversity and the strength of the team, which then enhances the entire team. And from there, we will then have communities that flourish. And when communities flourish and economies flourish, then you have your work environment is going to flourish. When those die, people are not going to be able to actually move forward and flourish. So I think that right now, a big shift has happened that people are watching. And if your brand or your business or your organization does not truly live your values and is not behaving in the right way that is reflected in your values, and you are not showing compassion and really curious and really wanting to be authentically curious about the person and where they are, as you say, Kim, they're going to jump ship or disappear, because what is a really nice thing that I'm enjoying is being able to see people where they are in their homes, with the cat that moves across the screen, or the dog that starts barking, or the 2-year-old that comes on or camera. The 8-year-old who comes and says, "Mom, I just need to know." And you're like, "Well, I'm actually on a conversation with the CEO. Can I please?" "No, Mom, I just need to know if I can have the ice cream." And that has really opened up a whole avenue of, actually, we were meant to be human beings in community with each other. We don't have to have the same belief system. We really need to get to know each other so that we can work together and dream big and move into a new way of working.
Yes.
So there you go.
Awesome. All right, well, we have one more question here, but for the sake of time, I think I'm going to go ahead and get to some of our registrants' questions. The first one, and then we can circle back to our last question that we have to kind of sum everything up. But one of our registrants asks, how do we cope with juggling the additional responsibilities, I guess, as it relates to handling COVID-19?
I'll start, if you don't mind. Well, one of the things to think about is, and this ties in with what Colleen just said, you were juggling it all along. The difference was there was an expectation to compartmentalize things. I'll use myself as an example. So in addition to this, I'm also a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a professor at a university. It's things that I've always done. The difference now may be my child is home and learning. Okay, I used to help with homework regularly. It's things that you've done, and this is where I'm going to put my coach's hat on. If it's something that you've always done, how have you juggled it all along? Where are the opportunities to make shifts in your daily routine to make this feel more manageable? Because your responsibilities haven't changed. It's a matter of the expectations as to how they're carried out has changed. Colleen, what would you say to that?
I would say that, additional to what you've mentioned, we need to be aware of the stress that people are under. And again, I'm going to say to be gentle with yourself and your teams, but to create a relationship. If you look at the SCARF model of influence, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness is really important for human beings. And it changes the way that we behave. And right now, we have no certainty and we have no control. So how do you And also as humans, it comes back to what is your why? What is your purpose? When we have a purpose, especially a collective purpose, it calms us. We are able to do so much more. So I would say that it's important to be authentic, to show compassion, to serve your team, serve them, but also to create hope, to create a common relatedness, so that they have something that they can control, and you have something that you can control. And I think, as Kim said, it's important to know that you are able and you have been able to do things, but you might be called to do a lot more things. And when that stress comes, you need to manage, you need to identify it first. You need to be able to hold on to what can I change, what can I not change, and to be able to be open, getting help. We're not in this alone. We are here as a collective. How do we use that? How do we leverage that to make it a strength? Amen.
And that's awesome. That actually is a good segue into our next question, which is, how do we approach leaders with this new strategy? Dr. Kim?
So this is something that we use in our respective practices with clients. So, if you have multiple sessions, you may want to focus on each phase of the model in each session. So session 1 can be developing self-awareness, and that's where you're sort of collecting the history and understanding the leader and helping them to understand themselves. And then the next session, you help them to develop an awareness of others. And it can start off as fairly innocuous questions. Tell me about your team, tell me about what your greatest challenge is with your team, and then going from there. And then the third session can be helping to shift their mindset to that global paradigm, to begin to see that your leadership does not just affect the organization, as we've learned with this pandemic, but, one of my favorite just researchers in leadership is Beltzman. He's right there in Johannesburg. And he talks about a lot of the things that we're seeing in leadership now are directly a lot of the things that we're seeing in society now are directly tied to leadership. But leaders forgot that. And so getting them to think that way again, incorporating this model, we designed it to be used with every client, and you can incorporate it into your interaction with every client. So that's how I would say to incorporate it, to roll it out to your clients.
And I think for me, it's not just clients, because you might be the client, and you might be a leader who is trying to say, well, how do I bring this human-based leadership into my organization so that we can work together effectively as human beings? And I just think that it starts with you. It starts with yourself, your awareness of yourself. But in this time of pandemic, right now, as we said right in the beginning, I think Kim referred to it's people are not sure about shelter. They're not sure about, their family is they're worried about their family. They now have to homeschool, but are their children now safe going to school? And all of these things, how do you bring the human-based leadership into this? And I think it comes again to the awareness of, where am I? How do I avoid hunkering down and hoping that the storm will pass? Or how do I find ways of stepping forward, just taking that one step forward? And by changing those little things, and by the way I change the way I interact with others as a leader, is going to then influence my team. Because if I am starting to speak words of hope, and I'm starting to, I'm really genuinely caring about you as my team member, then you are going to have permission to do that to others. And you will be able to learn more about the human-based leadership as we, this is not going to be the last webinar, and we are going to be publishing very soon, and a book for leaders of just how do I do this? Because it's very practical, because humans are practical. You don't change by thinking, you change by doing. So how do you bring this to leaders? You act it yourself, and you start just being aware of it and to use it. And others will then be able to use it as well. But it comes also to your values. If you are not actively owning your value, if values which drive your behavior are not authentic and they're just on the wall, then you're not going to get through this, okay? And that's where we need to start.
Awesome, awesome. I have a couple more questions here from our registrants. The next one is, how can we ensure the patient consultation via virtual interaction is seen as being empathetic and taken as valid? And we'll start with Dr. Kim on this one as well.
So here is an example of how you can actually use the human-based leader model for that. So first, before you can focus on how do I make another person see this mode of interaction as valuable, assess your own challenges with that mode of interaction. Because if deep down something this inherently feels like this is less than face-to-face interaction, it doesn't matter how much of a smile you put on, people will sense it. So first, my question would be, what are your reservations with this mode of interaction? What about it makes you feel as if they may be getting less than if you did face-to-face? And then once you can answer those questions, then you can begin to look at an awareness of others, right? So then you can begin to ask the question of, why would a patient feel this way? Or why would someone else feel this way? And then you can better address those concerns that they may have. Colleen, what would you say?
I would say that it always amazes me as a coach when I am coaching virtually that the empathetic network is alive and well even then. And I think it comes back to that artificial intelligence conundrum in a way of, if I am now, will you feel my energy? While I'm talking to you right now, do you feel my energy? Mm-hmm. And I think it's incredible how many clients go, oh my word, it worked. It's working. I can feel you. So it comes again to genuine curiosity and compassion. I will feel, as you said, Kim, it doesn't matter how many times I smile, but unless I'm genuinely really concerned about you and I want to know about you, my whole body is going to be communicating with you, even though we are thousands of kilometers or miles away. And so I would say, be genuine and don't give up on it. It's amazing how it's been proven to work. So there you go. That's what I'd say.
Awesome, awesome. All right, ladies, so for the sake of time, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to alternate who answers the question. So Colleen, I'll give you a question and then let you shed light on it. And then Dr. Kim, you'll take the next question and we'll push through, because I got about 4 or 5 more questions from our registrants that I want to get through. So if we can just do that. So Colleen, this next question is for you. And it's, how do we deal with the challenges of COVID-19 and growing the leadership?
Right. So I would like to say again that there are different levels of stress. And what is interesting is that when line managers are asked about stress, they often say that the people on the front line are very stressed. But it's also the C-suite are very stressed right now, because if you're responsible for a ship, you're the captain. If you're responsible for a hospital that doesn't have patients. If you're responsible for a car manufacturing and you're not manufacturing cars, this is huge. So my response to that is it's not forever. And how do we grow the leadership is to continue knowing yourself, being genuine, again, about caring for others. I'd like to use an example. Barry Waymiller, that's Bob Chapman, he has truly human leadership. And in 2008, when the markets were crashing, he had to make very difficult decisions. And because he had already started changing the way that he saw his employees as family, as people who had families, who were valuable for who they were. What they did at the time is they had everyone didn't take a cut in salary, they took unpaid leave, and they were able to support each other. And some people took more unpaid leave than others because they were able to. And the whole underpinning decision on that was, if we were a family, how would we support each other? And I think that is where the world is hungry right now. Don't make me a number. Make me a family person, someone who is valuable. And you will find that people you thought were leaders, this time is going to highlight their weaknesses, and you'll have to come alongside them and support them in this. And you will find other people who are going to step up who you didn't expect. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but I just think that it's important for us to own that we are human first, and human lives matter, and we matter as leaders, and to be able to create a support network around ourselves so that we can get through this, because in 2 years' time, this is going to be over, and where will we be? We need to support each other as we move forward.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes, you did answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kim, this next one is for you. Perception versus reality of remote learning or working as substandard. What support do people need to move forward optimistically?
I think one of the biggest challenge with remote learning is people just aren't used to it. Remote work, it's not a norm. And so right now it's perceived as a threat because it's such significant change in a short amount of time. And so people are uncomfortable, they're uncertain, and it's human nature when we're uncomfortable or when we're uncertain to avoid or push away from things. I mean, that's why we procrastinate. It's not that we don't necessarily want to do something. We're fearful of some aspect of whatever it is, and so we're avoiding it. It's a matter of good training, getting people comfortable with it. I've been engaged in remote work for the last 7 years in some capacity, and once you get used to it and change your perspective of it, you'll find that it's actually quite liberating. Right? The freedom and the flexibility with your schedule. For us, where we live in a major metropolitan area, our challenge is a commute. You're not dealing with that anymore. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, as you learn about the technology and realize all of the tools that are available to you, technology and innovation exists to make work easier. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, oh, this could really be helpful. But it starts with a mindset shift and understanding, is it that this is less than, subpar, or harder? And how can I overcome those initial feelings to authentically learn about how to use all of this to my advantage?
And can I just come in very quickly and just say that the research that is coming out now is that remote working actually is more productive because people have autonomy and flexibility, and you don't have to clock, well, some people have to clock in and out, but it's more, I choose more. and we can work simultaneously. And so don't be afraid of it. It's a new normal, and it's here, and it's quite effective if done properly.
One of the things, and I'll let you jump back in, Kyle, but one of the things that I've been saying to leaders is, a person who can juggle remote work with having different members of their family home and all of the distractions and still manage to be productive says a lot more about their work ethic than the traditional model of coming to the work site during set hours and working. You have to work, yes, a lot harder at first while everyone adjusts to this new situation. But think about it from the perspective of, it says a lot more about a person's work ethic that they can still be productive in spite of all of the distractions.
Great. Dr. Kim, I just had something really quick for you before I move on to the next question for Colleen. You mentioned Beltzman in Germany. Can you confirm that name?
Beltzman in Johannesburg. He's actually a professor. I think it's at University of Johannesburg. And he and his co-author, Johnson, it's Beltzman, Beldsman. He has written one of the most comprehensive books on leadership that I have ever come across. And he's right there in South Africa, a prolific scholar. I think he's done over 200 articles on leadership. It is his life's work, and he's a South African treasure. He's right there.
You see, good things come from South Africa.
Of course, of course.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I believe this next one is for you, Colleen. How do you assess the mental health of colleagues working from home? So you've mentioned, smiling and feeling your energy. How does that work with the mental health of colleagues working from home?
I think it comes again from the groundwork that you have made as a genuinely concerned human leader. We talked about this before, that I can come across, someone who's being fake. And then I'm not going to share anything with you. I'm going to give you what you want, and I'm not going to let you know that I'm battling. I think it leads from the previous question that was about remote working. How do you support people in that remote space? And it's about checking in and supporting and listening and really genuinely being curious and listening with compassion, but also showing compassion and seeing people again as an individual. Because in my team, I might have someone who's got 2-year-olds, and I might have someone who's got 18-year-olds. I have to be careful about where I schedule meetings. But it's not just that. At the moment, with the pandemic, we have stress on steroids. People were burnt out before. Mm-hmm. If you can imagine where you were 3 months ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, you were saying, world, please stop. I need to get off. I'm running on a treadmill, going nowhere fast. And it's so sad to hear about the suicides that are happening right now. Previously, we smiled and waved. When we were still at work in the physical space, you didn't always hear or see that the person was battling. Mental health has a stigma, unfortunately, but there is support. How much support are you giving your team? Are you allowing them to say, I'm anxious, I don't know? Are you giving them the resources that they are able to find the help? And I think it's the same as if we were in the same office space. It comes back to, do you see my value as a human being? And can you support me in my uniqueness in this time? So, yeah, it comes down to compassion and genuine empathy. And sorry, Kyle, trust. It comes down to trust.
Yes.
If I do not trust you, if you do not respect me, and I know that you have not built a relationship with me as a human being, I will not trust you. And then you will find out too late that I have a problem, that I need support. And sometimes the support comes, and it just has to be a little bit to make a big difference if you trust me or I trust you.
Compassion, empathy, and trust. Thank you for that, Colleen. All right, this is the last question from our registrants, and we have about 3 minutes left from our original set.
Yes.
The question is, how do we extend as leaders our duty of care to our team members remotely, given the additional pressures we have to contend with, as well as the lack of proximity now to our colleagues?
Well, see where you can share some of the load. I know one of the things that I did as a leader that was not a good habit was I carried too much. There were others willing to help me if I just asked. And one thing you can do is set up teams that can check on people, that can take turns checking on people, so you don't feel as if that entire burden falls on you. So using this model, first and foremost, how are you doing as the leader? Because I love the metaphor of the oxygen mask in an airplane. You have to put yours on first before you can help anyone else. So how are you doing? Then from there, go into, okay, who else can I sort of lean on to help me reach out to others, right? And step in where I need to, but understand that I won't be able to do everything. Honestly, what I'm hearing, and I just finished up a survey with a colleague, what I'm hearing from people, and Colleen has echoed this as well, people just want to know that you care and you see them. So a simple one-liner email or telephone call. Hi, how are you? I'm just checking in. That's it. That alone is what people will remember. One of the things that came out of the last World Economic Forum, right before all of this happened, was the currency of the future is trust. So as a leader, approach that not from the perspective of, I need to fix their problem, because when you approach it from that perspective, it'll feel like one more thing that you have to do, and then you'll avoid it. But look at it and go, okay, I just want to check in and see how they're doing. And then let's lean on others or identify some resources to help them, because you may not necessarily be the person that can fix it, right? So operating from that mindset and just reaching out before you ask for anything. I know I make it a habit with my team, before I ask them for anything, it's, hi, how are you doing? Are you okay? And I'm very in tune with their habits and their behavior. So if I don't hear from someone for a while, I like to lead with that question, because again, they're people too, and you just never know what they're going through. Start off with that and then see what resources you have available from there. Did I make my time?
You did. Thank you so much. All right, so I will go ahead and let you guys give closing remarks. We have come to the end of our questions.
Yeah.
So Colleen, you can start us off with closing remarks and also tell people how they can reach you, even though we have it there on the screen. Not sure if that's being shared with all of our registrant participants today, but yes. But please, Colleen, go ahead and close out, and Dr. Kim, you'll finish up.
You're muted, Colleen.
Yes, sorry, I muted myself because of the noise. Thanks, Kyle. I'm very aware of the time, so I'm going to trust that people can read and they will find me at vusilela.com.
Your handles, though, just in case.
Or they can Google it. Vusilela is a South African word that means rebirth, renewal. And you will find me on Vusilela Coach on social media. And I just want to say that to the people who are listening, you are enough. And in South Africa, we naturally say, how are you? But often it just becomes a byline and it's not really meant. So I just wanted to add to what Dr. Kim said of just phoning, contacting a person, how are you? And not allowing them to duck and dive and say, I'm fine. So I just wanted to end with saying I'm really excited about sharing this model with you. And I believe that it will change. It's going to change and revolutionize the way we see each other and ourselves. And it's going to allow leaders to grow in a way that they haven't. Well, they have grown, but to grow even more. Yeah.
And there is how to get in contact with me. My website, it's my name, drkimhires.com. So is all of my social media handles. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter as drkimhires.com. I'm okay, and I haven't discussed this with Colleen before, but I'm okay for staying on for a few more minutes. Kyle, if that's okay with you, to take any questions from our audience or our attendees, because we did promise a Q&A session. So in addition to the questions that were asked as attendees registered, do our attendees have any additional questions? Let me stop screen sharing so we
Dr.
can
Kemp,
see.
2 of those questions did come in during the session today. So the clarification on the
Beltzman
question, and then as well as the question that you closed out with is 2 questions that came in during our session today. So it looks like I have another one here. Let me see. Dr. Kim mentioned a SCOFF model.
It was me, and I mentioned it's SCARF as in SCARF, and it comes from David Rock, who is Australian but now living in New York, I think, and in the Institute of Neuroscience. And neuroscience is fairly new, but it's very exciting. And every year we learn more about our brains. And it just describes how people influence each other. So S means status, C means certainty, A means autonomy, R means relatedness, and F means fairness. And you've got to think for yourself. If you don't think something is fair, it doesn't matter. Someone can pay you R1 million or $1 million, but if you don't feel it's fair, you're not going to appreciate it. And so learn more about the model. It is, it changed the way I saw the world. I've appreciated learning about it.
Some incredible work on neuroscience comes out of Australia. It's quite fascinating. Yeah.
All right, so let me see if I have anything else here. Questions and answers. No, they just said, thank you, so great, thank you so much. Okay. So it looks like...
Well, I just wanted to say, Kyle, thank you to all the people who have come and listened to us. We appreciate you and look forward to interacting more with you.
Yes, you all will receive a follow-up survey within a few days, as well as the link to the recording. And also we'll be putting together a series of webinars to focus on each phase, to show you exactly how to implement each phase, not only with yourself, but also with your clients. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you. And thank you, Kyle, for being such a great
facilitator.
host.
Yes.
It's my pleasure, ladies. Thank you for having me today.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we're done.